And we are live. What is up, everybody? We're going to do a quick stream on Emerson. We were talking about Thoreau yesterday, so I thought it would be perfect to talk about Emerson. I think there's a lot of carryover. I think a lot of what you see in one, you see in the other. To me, Emerson's more interesting because his works are far more poetic. He wrote in the style of short essays that kind of intertwine philosophy and poetry as well as a deep sense of spirituality. So that's just something that I really love from him. And yeah, without further ado, let's get into the stream. What's up, Just One Human?
What if the answers to life's biggest questions
Come on.
about purpose, identity, and meaning weren't hidden in books or waiting to be taught, but were
How
already
did you
within you?
how did you get that? I haven't heard of anyone get that in like 5 years.
Ralph Waldo Emerson believed exactly this when he wrote, "Trust thyself, every heart vibrates to that iron string."
Trust thyself, every heart vibrates to the iron string. Damn.
His philosophy isn't merely about self-confidence. It's about understanding that each of us carries a profound connection to the divine and to nature, a connection capable of guiding us toward a more authentic and fulfilled life. Even Friedrich Nietzsche, one of history's most influential philosophers, admired Emerson as a twin.
He essentially everything Nietzsche says is echoed in Emerson's writings, but it's kind of the thing of Emerson said things in a positive, inspirational way, where Nietzsche said something in a confronting, insulting, fiery way. And that's why the two are so, I don't know, like, unless, until you hear Nietzsche say that, you don't think they would get along. It's kind of a weird combination.
Soul. While their philosophies differed in some ways, Nietzsche described reading Emerson's work as, "I have
He would carry around Nietzsche would carry around a set of Emerson's essays, and he had them all marked up, which I think is extremely fascinating because I myself have that same thing.
never felt so much at home in a book." Emerson's ideas on individuality and self-reliance have inspired generations of thinkers and remain profoundly relevant today. Let's find out more about.
I think Emerson's idea of self-reliance is more important now than ever because think of how many people actually have a sense of self. You know, when you go on social media and you see like the echo chambers and all of these things, it's what it really is someone looking for themselves and hoping to find it in a group. But the truth is that's a hollow victory. To be part of a group but to not be yourself is a worse sentence than being completely alone on a desert island. You almost got suspended. What'd you do this time?
his ideas, and if you can do me a favor and subscribe and hit the thumbs up button, it would really mean a lot to me, and it would really help this
This is
channel.
True Sage, by the way. I don't think I said that
Ralph
here.
Waldo Emerson was a 19th
We
century American essayist,
I don't know
poet,
what's
and
gonna do.
philosopher
We watched a video by him yesterday.
whose life and ideas profoundly shaped the intellectual and cultural movement.
Emerson, interestingly enough, would tour university and give speeches. And there's a very famous speech where he he goes to Harvard and he goes to the School of Divinity and goes, "I don't believe Jesus was the Son of God," and like everyone starts booing him, which is so funny because he was a Unitarian, so of course he didn't believe that. That's what a Unitarian is essentially, but it's
Movements of
so
his
funny.
time. Born in Boston in 1803 into a family with a long line of ministers, Emerson initially followed in his father's footsteps, attending Harvard Divinity School and becoming a Unitarian minister. However, his time in the ministry was short-lived.
Emerson essentially, like I feel like Emerson wanted to be a minister. I feel like he wanted to be a priest or someone like that, but I feel like it's almost how Nietzsche described that like the church is more of an institution of power than an institution of enlightenment, essentially. And that seems to me like Emerson. Like Emerson would have liked the faith or the ministry or whatever you want to call it more if he was not a free thinker, but because he was a free thinker, he was seemingly conflicted with the dogma and conflicted with his own beliefs and the interpretations and not directly agreeing with it. Your math teacher hates you? Well, you're probably just bad at math. What do you mean? Like,
After the
just
death
get
of his
better,
first
man.
wife, Ellen Tucker, in 1831, Emerson experienced a profound spiritual crisis that led him to question traditional religious doctrines and the role of organized religion. In 1832, Emerson resigned from the ministry and embarked on a journey to Europe, where he encountered some of the leading intellectual figures of the time, including
Interestingly enough, Emerson, I think he's about to say it here, but Emerson was like a very well studied, very well educated person. And what he noticed is that there was no American intellectuals. There was no Americans who kind of held their own with that of Europe. And essentially what his writings were an attempt to create a own genre of American philosophy, American intellectual pursuits, and that sort of things.
William Wordsworth, Samuel Taylor Coleridge,
All
and
she
Thomas
does, she's probably divorced because of you. You probably caused her all the stress that made her that made her sign the papers.
Carlyle. These encounters deeply influenced his thinking, particularly his interest in individualism, nature, and the power of intuition over institutional authority. Upon returning to the United States, Emerson began delivering lectures that would form the foundation of his transcendentalist philosophy. Settling in Concord, Massachusetts, he became a central figure in the transcendentalist movement,
I think his nickname was the Sage of Concord or something like
which
that.
emphasized self-reliance.
This is who we talked about yesterday, Henry David Thoreau. This is the guy that wrote Moby Dick. I think this is Emily Dickinson. I may be wrong. I don't know who any of these other people are.
The spiritual connection between humans
I've
and
probably heard
nature,
of them. I just don't know
and the
them off
belief in an
pictures.
overarching divine presence that Emerson called the Oversoul, which we'll cover later in the video.
It's just one human. It is definitely your fault. Every problem in the world is your fault.
Emerson's personal life was marked by intellectual curiosity and deep connections with other thinkers, including Henry David Thoreau and Margaret Fuller. His
Essentially, he inspired Thoreau to write Walden.
essays, such as Nature, 1836, and Self-Reliance, 1841,
These are probably his two most famous essays. A lot of people credit these with being the best. I think they're certainly up there. There's an argument for compensation, there's an argument for circles, there's an argument for history. Honestly, every essay that Emerson wrote is uniquely special in its own way and will inspire you in a million ways. So I think it's incomplete to only read Self-Reliance. I think it's incomplete to only read Nature. Emerson is somebody that is so philosophically simple, but so philosophically deep at the same time.
remain among his most influential works, offering a vision of life that challenges readers to trust themselves, embrace individuality, and seek the divine within and around them. Despite personal tragedies, including the deaths of loved ones and the challenges of raising a
Fluffy
family,
Kitty will not come back.
Emerson maintained his belief in the power of resilience and the ability of
I feel like we were over this. She won't come back. It's fine. Still love her here.
individuals to transcend life's difficulties. For Ralph Waldo Emerson, nature was far more than a collection of physical landscapes. It was a profound and living presence, deeply intertwined with the human spirit. In his essay, Nature, he wrote, "The currents of the universal being circulate through me. I am part or particle of God."
But essentially, you can see Emerson has read the Gita. That's where he gets this idea from, this idea of a monad, or essentially that everything is a universal being, everything's universal consciousness. There's a million different ways to describe it, but just think of it not necessarily as there's like a God or there's like this. It's just everything is in flux, everything's changing, and everything is kind of expressions of one universal substance. That's how I like to liken Emerson's Oversoul.
This statement encapsulates Emerson's belief that the natural world is a direct reflection of the divine, offering a pathway to greater understanding of ourselves and the universe. His philosophy of nature challenges the view that the
No, it wasn't
material
bad.
world
It was
exists
just like a
solely for human
misunderstanding.
exploitation. Instead, he saw nature as a mirror of spiritual truth, a space where individuals could connect with the oversoul, the universal spirit that unites all living beings. This perspective, as mentioned earlier, formed a cornerstone of transcendentalism, emphasizing that through nature, we encounter the divine not as an abstract entity, but as an intimate presence in our lives.
So a lot of people misinterpret this. When they think of transcendentalism, they think of going out and living in the woods and being amongst the woods, and that's where you find the answer. And that's an element just for the fact that it centers you and it brings you back to a more holistic lifestyle, a more authentic lifestyle. You know, Henry David Thoreau essentially said he had to go out in the woods to break himself out of the habit of modern day life, break himself away from the things that he was worrying about that really weren't important, and do some soul searching and find the things that were important. That's essentially what transcendentalism is. Yeah,
The
no, it wasn't
oversoul,
anything
a
like
universal spirit that
crazy.
connects all living beings. In his essay,
Honestly, it was
The
just
Oversoul,
like it was just more weird than anything. I was just like, this is weird, and then she's like, it's not weird. And I was like, whatever.
1841,
It is what
Emerson
it is, man.
described it as an eternal and unifying presence accessible to everyone through introspection and intuition. He believed that each person carries a spark of the divine within, capable of guiding them toward truth and understanding. Within man is the soul of the whole, he wrote.
To me, this idea that he's talking about is like the human imagination. So think of it that way. Like Emerson says something in his essay History, like if somebody has done it, that means you could do it as well. If you take the same path, if you create the same exact circumstances and do the same exact decisions. So essentially what he's saying is that we have this like universal force that everyone has access to in the imagination that allows us to drastically improve or drastically change our current circumstances. And what is that aside from a divine gift? What is that aside from limitless possibilities of the entire world?
Emphasizing the interconnectedness of all life. This concept challenged traditional religious structures by asserting that spiritual truth doesn't require institutional mediation, but can be directly experienced through reflection, creativity, or communion with nature. The Oversoul also carried an ethical dimension.
To Emerson, like religion or spirituality is just following your authentic path, following who you really are and being who you really are, essentially.
Reminding us of our shared unity and fostering empathy and harmony. By centering spirituality in personal experience and universal connection, Emerson's Oversoul offers a timeless vision of how to find meaning and purpose in a fragmented world. Emerson believed that immersing oneself in the natural world had profound restorative benefits, both.
Think of like, there's like been studies that show that if you're near running water, it immediately improves your mood. But if you don't believe this, like what I want you to do is the next time you have some free time, what shampoo do I use? That's the secret. The next time you have some free time, like just spend some time in nature. The next time you're extremely stressed out, the next time that things don't seem to be going right, like just whatever it is you're worried about, remove yourself from that scenario and take a walk, go on a hike, go in some surroundings that is away from things. And I promise you, you'll feel a whole lot better. I promise you, there's like a grounding element to it. There's something that will bring you back to yourself and put things in perspective and force you to stop worrying about so many things that don't really matter.
Spiritually and emotionally. He argued that nature serves as a refuge from the noise of daily life, offering clarity and renewal. In the woods, we return to reason and faith, he wrote, suggesting that stepping into nature can help us reconnect with our authentic selves. For Emerson, nature was not just a source of beauty or inspiration, it was a teacher. Observing its patterns and cycles revealed universal truths about resilience.
So I think this is what he says in his essay. It's either in nature or circles, but essentially he says like if you observe nature, then you can observe yourself because everything that occurs in nature occurs in you as well. And there's something extremely profound in that. Like, you think about a tree that dies and decomposes, and now the soil is healthy, and now something else can grow, and that's the exact same thing with you. And that's true physically, but that's also true with you know, your corporeal self or your spiritual self. Like the minute you pass the people that you left behind, you take up your mantle and try to inspire the next generation. Use the lessons you gave them and, try to be better. It's it's extremely like simple, but there's such a universal truth in this idea.
Interdependence, and the harmony underlying existence. He urged individuals to approach nature with curiosity and reverence, seeing it not as separate from humanity, but as an integral part of it. In this sense, nature offered lessons not just about the world, but about how to live with purpose and connection. His radical vision of nature also carried an implicit critique of industrialization and materialism. He saw these forces as alienating people from their innate connection to the natural world.
I wonder what he would say now to see the modern day world and see how far we've strayed from a more holistic way of living, more authentic way of living. And I'm sure he would just point to all the people that are sad, all the people that are struggling, all the people that can't seem to get things right, and urge them to return to a more natural way of living, I guess we'll say.
His writings encourage us to
I hate to say natural living because it's somewhat associated with like living in the woods, but that's not really what he's talking about. Really, what he's talking about is like following nature is not following, oh, go live in a cabin. It's following your own nature. It's asking yourself in every moment, am I doing something because I want to do it, or am I doing something because other people tell me to? That's essentially what Emerson means when he says nature.
step back from the artificial structures of modern life and rediscover the wisdom and balance that nature provides. Ralph Waldo Emerson's view of nature shares intriguing similarities with diverse spiritual and philosophical traditions, highlighting a
It reminds me the most of Taoism. I'm not sure if he ever read the Tao Te Ching. I know he read the Gita, which it holds similar ideas, but it reminds me the most of Taoism, I would
universal
say.
recognition of the sacred in the natural world. Like Native American and pagan beliefs, Emerson saw nature as alive with spiritual significance, a space where the divine is interconnected with all life. His concept of the oversoul aligns with the philosopher and poet Ibn Arabi concept of oneness of being, which emphasizes that all existence is a manifestation of the divine.
This is what Spinoza said. This is what the Taoists said. This is what the Gnostics said. This is what the Freemasons said. This is what the Hindus said. This idea is repeated time and time again. This is not something unique, and this is not something that only this guy said.
Similarly, the Hindu Advaita Vedanta's
Okay,
non-dualistic
never mind.
philosophy parallels Emerson's belief in the unity of the individual spirit
He
with a
should
greater
mention Taoism
universal
too.
essence, and also Emerson's vision of the divine as present in nature echoes Spinoza's philosophy of Deus sive natura,
There we
or
go.
God as nature. Many of you highlighted these parallels in response to my previous video on Spinoza's God, which I highly recommend, and thank you for
Spinoza's
sharing
God
your
is very
thoughts.
interesting.
Your insights have helped me find these similarities between Emerson's view of nature and these traditions. These shared perspectives underscore a cross-cultural appreciation for nature as both a mirror of the self and a source of universal truth. Another key concept in Emerson's philosophy is self-reliance, which was far
Self-reliance is just the idea that if you do everything for yourself, then you don't need anything else. But it's when you need others for you that you feel an empty husk of yourself.
more than a call for independence. It was a spiritual principle rooted in the belief that each individual carries a divine spark within. He argued that by trusting one's intuition and inner voice, a person could access the deeper truths of life to transcend superficial concerns and without reliance on external authority or societal validation. When Emerson spoke about self-reliance, he wasn't merely referring to independence in the sense of financial or physical autonomy. He was describing something much deeper, an unshakable trust in one's own thoughts, values, and inner voice.
He says something along the lines of, to be great is to be misunderstood. And he also says, to be yourself in a world that seeks conformity is the greatest of achievements. So essentially, what he's saying is no matter what you do, it will never come close to being authentically you. Because, I mean, an easier way to think about it is nobody has your exact set of DNA. And even if you're a twin, you know, somebody might have the same DNA as you, but the truth is they don't have the exact same experience as you. And thus, the greatest thing you could ever give to the world, the greatest gift, the greatest achievement that you could ever pass on to other people is living as you really are, living as you're really meant to be in every moment.
For Emerson, self-reliance was about finding the courage to follow one's own path, even when it contradicts the expectations or norms of society. In his essay, Self-Reliance, Emerson argued that each person has a unique inner wisdom that is as valid as any external authority, be it religious, academic, or social. He believed that when we defer too often to others, whether to gain approval or out of fear of standing out, we lose touch with that inner wisdom.
This is where Emerson and Jung kind of overlap. They both believe that the worst thing an individual could do is lose sight of themselves.
Trust thyself, he urged, and in doing so,
That's
He
something Plato
emphasized that
said.
self reliance means recognizing and honoring our own thoughts and instincts as inherently valuable.
Actually, Plato said know thyself, but it's very similar.
Emerson's idea of self reliance is also closely tied to individualism, not in the sense of self centeredness, but as a dedication to one's personal growth and values. This perspective challenges us to move beyond conformity.
When people think of like selfishness, they kind of mischaracterize it because I think selfishness is, you know, valuing yourself and not selling yourself short. But there's like unevolved selfishness that's like I need to put myself above others, and that's not at all what Emerson's talking about. Emerson's saying like be all you can be so that you can be all you can be for other people. That's really the idea. It's like I think we kind of have branded selfishness as like a bad characteristic, but as Emerson himself says, there's no such thing as a bad characteristic or a good characteristic that does not have also shades of the opposite.
Where we might adopt beliefs or behaviors simply to fit in and instead cultivate authenticity. In fact, he claimed, nothing is at last sacred but the integrity of your own mind. Emerson viewed this type of self trust as essential to living a life of purpose, strength, and authenticity. Ralph Waldo Emerson is often celebrated for his philosophy of self reliance and individualism. However, self reliance does not imply isolation or selfishness, and his views on community reveal a more nuanced understanding of the relationship between the individual and society. Rather, he believed that authentic relationships and meaningful contributions to the community arise when individuals first cultivate their inner strength and
So think like if you are the best version of yourself, you could be the best version for other people. If you're in a relationship and you have all of these struggles and all of these hardships, then you bring that stuff to the table. Whereas if you've dealt with your own nonsense, if you dealt with your own struggles, and you come as a healed person to the table, whether it's a relationship, whether it's just a friendship, whether it's just a business transaction, it's always better to have dealt with your own stuff so that you can take the load off of other people, essentially, is what he's saying.
integrity. In contemporary terms, Emerson's philosophy of self reliance challenges us to step back from the external pressures of social media, pursuing trends, cultural norms, or material success, and instead look inward for guidance. It's a call to silence the noise of the world and rediscover the wisdom and power already within us. Through self trust, Emerson believed, we can achieve not only personal fulfillment, but also a deeper connection with others and with the universal truths that bind us together.
Think about your best friends. Think about people that you're keeping at a distance, you're keeping at a arm's length. Um, the people you keep at arm's length are the people that are friendly to you, are nice to you, but it always feels like they're up to something. It always feels like they're using your friendship for something else. Whereas your best friends are the people that are fully themselves with you, fully open, are fully able to give you criticism and be honest with you and won't sugarcoat things. Those are always the greatest friendships, and that's really the kind of idea that Emerson's echoing here and the kind of life he's telling you to live.
I encourage you to reflect on how Emerson's philosophy might resonate in your own life. What would it mean for you to reconnect with nature, to trust your intuition, or to see yourself as part of a universal spirit? Perhaps it starts with small steps, taking a quiet walk in the woods, journaling your thoughts without judgment, or simply pausing to listen to your inner voice. Thanks for
Spinoza's God. What's this? So we watched this one yesterday. I don't know if this is gonna be. I don't know if Spinoza's God's gonna be interesting. Okay, we'll watch Orwell. The
political
funniest thing
language
about
designed to
Orwell is that nobody understands him because if you read Orwell and you believe he had a political leaning, that's missing the point of things. Like obviously Orwell had his own politics, but he wasn't warning about the left or the right. He was warning about all politics in general. And that's something that most room temperature IQ people who read Orwell and are inspired by him will never understand. It's like the regulation of speech, the regulation and the stepping to an authoritarian state can come from anywhere. And in his final interview, he said, "Don't let it happen." And it's a haunting and chilling message because it seemingly has. seemingly has happened. Um, there's less privacy, there's less freedom, there's less rights, there's the things that are essential to a healthy society are being stripped away, and we are actively seeing the results of that in real time.
To make lies sound truthful and murder respectable, and to give an appearance of solidity to pure wind.
Of an outlaw regime that threatens the peace with weapons of mass murder.
Watching this is just so funny because you're just like, how do people buy this? And what was it, like 3 months ago? The Trump administration tried to say the exact same thing, which I'm like, who who would fall for something and then 20 years later fall for the exact same
Защищаем
lie?
нашу общую родину, чтобы сегодняшние неонацисты захватили власть на Украине.
Some lies don't need to be hidden, they just need to be well dressed. They arrive cloaked in the familiar.
That
Official
one,
statements, press releases, carefully chosen words that sound reasonable, but
okay, if you don't know about the Azov Battalion, just look them up. That's obviously it's if you're the Russian president or whatever, no, not Zelensky. Why do I not know his name? Putin. If you're Putin, you're obviously gonna play it up, but there is some scary people that are in Ukraine that are fighting for Ukraine. So it's like any war though. There's no such thing as a good guy. There's just, you know, lesser of two evils generally.
blur the truth.
It's like if you research World War II, and I guess you could say the good guys won, but you know, is there ever truly a good guy in a war? Because there was the Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and then there was the Dresden stuff. Like, I mean, if I was in those war rooms, I wouldn't have made those decisions, and I don't support them, and I think they're some of the worst atrocities ever. So it's like, you know what I mean? There's no such thing as an objectively good side or bad side. There's just one that's a little bit less brutal or is more morally aligned with what you believe.
When war becomes peacekeeping, torture becomes enhanced interrogation, and mass surveillance is sold as national security, the deception isn't in what's being said, it's in the language itself. Orwell wasn't simply criticizing bad writing, he was exposing a tool of power. Political language, he argued, doesn't just obscure reality, it replaces it. It creates a parallel world where contradiction becomes coherence and cruelty hides behind abstraction.
George Carlin has a great bit on this that we've dumbed down language to the point that we don't even know what it means anymore. And it's almost like a legalese game to dress up things and make them seem not as brutal. Like, think about all of the words that are popularized and think about all of the connotations that they're assigned and how it's kind of used to control the public sentiment and public perception of certain events and certain things. Like, I don't care what side of the political aisle you are on, but like, I promise you, you've been in a conversation and you're talking to somebody who is literally just repeating what the news said without even watching the video or looking at the thing themselves, and they say something so dumb and so incorrect that you're like, Am I talking to a political pundit right now? Like, what are you from Fox News? Are you from CNN? Like, why are you citing statistics for me? We're in a conversation. It's just so weird.
Terrifying part is how easily people adapt to it, how, over time, vague language begins to produce vague thinking. George Orwell wasn't just critiquing how politicians speak, he was trying to uncover why the decay of language matters so deeply. In his 1946 essay, Politics and the English Language, he argued that
I need to read this. I've heard several people say to
vague,
read this.
bloated, or euphemistic language doesn't just reflect unclear thinking, it actively produces it. When we rely on prefabricated phrases or abstract jargon, we stop engaging with the actual meaning behind our words.
That's weird. I just said that. So essentially, what he's saying is, if you use the slogans, if you use the talking points, then you kind of simplify the issue. Noam Chomsky in Manufacturing Consent said something very interesting about this idea that in America you can have a very in-depth topic about a few key issues that don't actually matter. But when you get to the real issues that actually harms everybody, then there's no discussion allowed. Then you're on that third rail. It's kind of it it's very it's very Orwellian, we'll just say.
And when meaning slips, so does accountability. He writes, A speaker who uses that kind of language has gone some distance toward turning himself into a machine. It's a striking
Okay, so what you need to understand is if you start talking like everybody else, then you're no longer human. You might as well be a robot. You might as well be AI. You might as well be these corporate sanitized emails that are just mass sent that have zero depth, that have zero heart in them. Because what makes a human being is the capacity to be wrong, the capacity to evaluate, the capacity to look at the thing they just said and said, you know what? I agree with what you said right here. I actually like this and change their mind. Okay. A computer can only get input and give output. You can evaluate, you can come to a determination, you can decide what is true for you, what you believe. And even if you're wrong, you can decide to back it up or you can decide to change your mind. That's essentially what Orwell was saying. And we've lost this like human side that we used to have, you know. Every discussion we had is so censored. Every discussion we have, even with ourselves, we're like, we can't believe this idea, we can't have this thought, we can't do this thing because it's not correct, it's not something that is, you know, acceptable in social, like a social society. It's like that's not, when we have to start guarding our own thoughts, that's when things are very, very scary.
image. Language not as expression, but automation. Words used not to clarify thought, but to obscure it. For Orwell, this wasn't just sloppy communication. It was a form of intellectual surrender. The more we rely on empty phrases, the less we're able to confront the truth, let alone resist it. This connection between language and thought is at the heart of Orwell's philosophy. He believed that clear language
Essentially, this is something that Earl Nightingale said, the more words that you have, the better you can express yourself, and the better you can express yourself, the better you can get your point across. And yet, we've never had such a dumb populace because most of the beliefs they hold, most of the words they use, most of their ideas they hold are never actually ideas that they think about. It's just ideas that have been repeated and a very narrow grouping of words that you use to describe the world around you. And it's very frustrating. And this is why I will always advocate reading. This is why I will always advocate self-education over formalized, institutionalized education because you know, you're not put into school to become an intelligent person. You're put into school to become a functional employee. You know, even in these higher level jobs, even as a lawyer, you're taught to think like a lawyer, not taught to think like a philosopher or a spiritual person or anything else. You know, if you're an engineer, you're taught to do math. You're not taught to read. You're not taught to learn. You're not taught to be creative. And this is why architecture fucking sucks because there's no creativity applied to anything else. You're taught to go into one box, fit in that box, and if you stick your head out, you're a fool. You're an idiot. You're this, you're that. You don't have any sort of credibility. And it's such a backwards and twisted world.
is a moral responsibility, because when language collapses, so does our ability to reason, to judge, and to act. Deceit becomes easier. Violence becomes abstract. Reality becomes negotiable. And this wasn't just a theory. Orwell saw it unfolding during wars under totalitarian
What is this jacket? Why is Churchill? Churchill looks like there's like a kid, like his body ends right here, and there's the little legs, and then there's another kid underneath him, like two guys in a trench coat.
Orwell saw it unfolding during wars under totalitarian regimes and in the quiet bureaucracies of his time. But he didn't just describe what was happening. He imagined what might come next. A world where language itself becomes the battleground. In his book, 1984, Orwell took his fears about language to their most extreme conclusion.
So I'm sort of running out of time, so I'll just give this one last speech. So 1984, essentially what it comes down to is that words are more violent than actual violence, and thus we always have to sanitize things, thus we always have to change the sliding scale to rewrite history, to rewrite the things that once were, because now they don't fit our policies, now they don't fit our sensibilities. Now, you know, the scale has become even narrower, and this one idea is very dangerous, and it's been deemed dangerous, so we can't believe it. But essentially, the ending to 1984 is very harrowing and it's very scary because, you know, this is something that you saw, like people stopped getting taken out after Malcolm X because they realized that if you make a martyr out of someone, their words become more valuable than ever. Their words are more important. And the person that took out Charlie Kirk is a fool because of this, because whatever message you hope to stop being shared, you now made more powerful because you made it so that this guy was so dangerous, that his idea was so important that we need to pay attention to it even more. Now we need to spread it even more. And it's really gotten his message across, more than you would if he was just still here. And that's the most ironic part of this. It's like this guy really thought he did something. This guy really thought he took out something, but he just made the entire movement that much stronger. And essentially, the ending of 1984 does the opposite. They kill the idea, not the man. They take Winston and they basically torture him to the point that he no longer believes these ideas, and no longer believes these ideas are more important than his own life, and he rebukes these ideas and he says they're not important, and they let him live because they have killed the idea. They have let him know that this idea is not something worth dying for, and since he won't die for it, no one else will. And that's essentially Orwell's statement, that ideas are powerful, that ideas are everlasting, and if we allow these ideas to seep out of consciousness, if we allow these ideas to stop being important, then they will disappear. And I think that's really the genius in Orwell. I'm assuming Orwell read Plato's Apology. I'm assuming Orwell did a lot of research into, Giordano Bruno or other people that died at the stake for the sake of freedom of thought. And it's kind of sad to see the world we live in. It's kind of sad to see that nobody understands the issue of free speech. It always becomes like a free speech absolutist versus a person that wants to censor. Like it's not the fact that free speech isn't the most important issue today shows exactly how dumbed down society has been. And you know, I don't really believe in voting. I don't really think it does much. I think you're selecting between two corporate backed hollow husks of individuals. But if I were to vote, it would always be for the person that has the stronger stance on free speech. But with that said, I love you guys so much. I got places to be. Yeah, see you guys in the next stream. Peace out. Yeah, that's all I got.